There is a story circulating about King Charles that sounds almost too precise to be true. A secret document, a private meeting, a possible change to the way royal wealth could pass from one generation to the next. And, at the center of the speculation, two brothers whose relationship has already become one of the most complicated stories inside the modern royal family. Prince William, Prince Harry. But here is where this story gets interesting. Because the most dramatic version of the claim says King Charles secretly rewrote parts of his private financial arrangements and created restrictions that could affect Harry and even influence William's future as king. There are stories describing sealed documents, hidden clauses, private trusts, and extraordinary legal powers. Some versions even describe secret movements of money and dramatic confrontations at royal residences. But how much of that is actually real? And how much has been built around real royal facts to create a story that sounds like an undercover palace thriller? Tonight, we're going to separate the two, because the truth is considerably more complicated, and in some ways more fascinating. To understand the controversy, we first have to understand something most people never think about. There isn't simply one giant royal bank account. The finances surrounding the monarchy are divided into different categories. There is the crown estate. There are private royal properties. There are institutional assets. There is the sovereign grant. And there is the Duchy of Lancaster, which provides private income to the reigning sovereign. Official royal financial reports make these distinctions clear. So when a dramatic story claims that the king can simply move billions from one royal account to another with a signature, the first question should be, which assets are we actually talking about? That question matters, because the word royal does not automatically mean personally owned by the king, and that is where some viral versions of this story begin to fall apart. The reason this story has gained attention is simple. It combines real institutions with extremely specific allegations. Sandringham is real. King Charles is the owner of Sandringham as a private royal estate. The Duchy of Lancaster is real. The Privy Purse is real. Royal wills really do have unusual privacy arrangements, and British inheritance law really does contain strict procedures surrounding wills and witnessing. Put all of those real ingredients into one story, and suddenly an invented event can sound remarkably authentic. Imagine hearing, a secret codicil was signed at Sandringham. It sounds official. Legal advisors were called. That sounds plausible. A financial structure was changed. Again, believable. But then comes the question that changes everything. Where is the document? Where is the court record? Where is the official statement? Where is the credible reporting confirming that this actually happened? And so far, that evidence is missing. The most explosive version of the story focuses on Prince Harry. According to the viral narrative, a secret legal amendment supposedly created new conditions that could prevent Harry from receiving certain private family assets if he remained outside Britain for a specified period. The story then connects that supposed rule to Harry's decision to step away from royal duties and establish his life in the United States. It is a clever narrative. The timeline appears to match. The characters are real. The family conflict is real. And the financial question is believable enough to make people wonder. But there is a major problem. There is no publicly verified evidence establishing that King Charles created such a secret 5-year inheritance mechanism specifically targeting Harry. That distinction is crucial. A story can describe what a document supposedly says, but unless that document is available, or a credible authority confirms it, the audience is still hearing an allegation, not a confirmed fact. And that is precisely where this story changes from news into speculation. The second part of the story is even more dramatic. Some versions suggest that Charles could create financial restrictions that would affect Prince William after he eventually becomes king. That sounds shocking, but again, we have to separate different types of royal property. The Duchy of Lancaster is not simply Charles's personal checking account. It is a distinct estate associated with the sovereign, and its income forms part of the financial arrangements surrounding the monarchy. Official financial reports continue to describe the duchy and its income within that institutional framework. So the idea that Charles could secretly empty the entire structure and permanently dictate William's future financial decisions with a single private document is a much bigger legal claim than the viral videos make it sound, and that is exactly why this part of the story deserves skepticism. Now we reach one of the most dramatic claims circulating around this story. Some versions describe secret security changes at Sandringham. They talk about restricted access, biometric systems, private communications, locked rooms, and even the suggestion that William could somehow be prevented from entering parts of the residence. It sounds like a scene from a political thriller. But there is an obvious problem. Royal security procedures are not normally documented publicly in the kind of operational detail these stories describe. So when a video gives an exact time, an exact room, an exact security action, and an exact conversation between unnamed officials, that precision should not automatically be mistaken for evidence. Sometimes precision is simply a storytelling technique. In fact, the more cinematic the details become, the more important independent verification becomes. And then comes the alleged document at the center of everything, a codicil. In simple terms, a codicil can be used to amend an existing will. That part is real. British law also has formal requirements concerning the execution and witnessing of wills, so the basic legal vocabulary being used in these stories is not invented from nothing. But that does not prove the alleged royal amendment exists, and there is a huge difference between saying British law allows a person to amend a will and saying King Charles secretly amended his inheritance arrangements on a particular day at Sandringham and removed specific rights belonging to Harry and William. The first is a legal principle, the second is a specific factual allegation, and the second requires evidence. This may actually be the most interesting part. The story works because it takes several genuine pieces of royal history and places them inside a fictional or unverified sequence of events. It gives the audience real names, real locations, real institutions, real legal terminology. Then it adds an invisible document, a secret meeting, a dramatic deadline, a family conflict, and finally, a huge financial consequence. That structure creates the feeling that the viewer is being shown something the mainstream media somehow missed. But there is a psychological trick here. The more specific a story becomes, the more trustworthy it can feel. At 4:20 in the afternoon, 3 witnesses entered the room. A leather case was carried through the estate. A document was sealed. Those details create imagery. They create tension, but they are not proof. A precise detail without a source is still an unsupported detail. Now let's step away from the speculation. There is a very real story developing around the royal family right now. Prince Harry and Meghan have been making plans connected to a return to the United Kingdom, while reports suggest the move could create new opportunities for Harry to spend more time around his father. Recent reporting says King Charles hopes that greater proximity could eventually help improve the relationship between his 2 sons. At the same time, William and Harry remain estranged. That is the genuine family tension underneath much of the current speculation. And that tension makes inheritance stories especially powerful. Because people naturally ask, if the brothers cannot agree personally, could money and property create another battlefield? That is a legitimate question, but it should not be confused with proof that a secret inheritance war has already taken place. Another element frequently added to these stories involves Princess Diana's possessions. This is particularly effective because Harry and William did inherit personal items connected to their mother. There is genuine historical material surrounding Diana's possessions, jewelry, clothing, letters, and other personal effects, but that does not establish the viral claim that Charles recently reclassified a particular Diana heirloom and permanently removed it from Harry's family line. That specific allegation would require documentation, and without that documentation it remains a claim. This is an important lesson when covering royal stories. A genuine historical inheritance does not automatically validate a new allegation about that inheritance. Based on the evidence currently available, there is no solid public confirmation that King Charles secretly executed the extraordinary inheritance operation described in these viral narratives. There is no credible evidence establishing the dramatic chain of events involving secret security lockouts, a hidden emergency inheritance clause, a special 5-year Harry restriction, or a sweeping private transfer of royal assets exactly as described. That doesn't mean every detail surrounding royal finances is public. it isn't. Royal wills and private arrangements can involve significant privacy, but there is a difference between "the details are private" and "therefore this particular secret story must be true." We cannot make that leap. Perhaps the most fascinating reality is not that King Charles secretly destroyed Harry's inheritance. It is that the royal family's financial world is genuinely complicated enough for fictional stories to sound believable. There really are different categories of royal property. There really are private estates. There really are institutional assets. There really are unusual legal traditions surrounding royal wills. And there really is a deep unresolved relationship between William and Harry. Those facts provide almost everything a storyteller needs. Add one mysterious document, one alleged secret clause, a rainy afternoon at Sandringham, and suddenly the story becomes a palace thriller. But the responsible question is not, "How shocking is this?" The responsible question is, "Where is the evidence?" So if you came here expecting confirmation that King Charles has secretly erased Prince Harry from the royal inheritance system, the evidence does not currently justify that conclusion. But there is another question that may be far more interesting. As Harry spends more time in Britain, as Charles continues trying to repair his relationship with his younger son, and as William prepares for the future role that will eventually become his, the question of family, money, and royal responsibility is not going away. The monarchy has always depended on something more complicated than wealth. It depends on institutions, tradition, law, and, perhaps most importantly, the ability of one generation to hand an institution to the next. That means the real story may not be about a secret document at all. It may be about what happens when a family disagreement collides with an institution that is hundreds of years old. And that is a question no dramatic codicil can answer, because behind every royal fortune, there is a legal structure. Behind every inheritance, there is a history. And behind every palace rumor, there is one question that should always come first. Is it actually true?